So it's hard to think of a game that's had more controversy surrounding it than The Last of Us 2. There's been leaks and player work standard issues and just a whole slew of other things that have plagued this game. And there's bound to be some issues with this sequel no matter what. The Last of Us is one of the most highly rated and regarded games that has ever been released. People fell in love with the world and the characters. The ending is one of the most widely debated and discussed conclusions in any piece of media, particularly from a morality standpoint. And on that alone, there was no way that everybody was going to be happy with this game. But before we get into specifics, I would just like to ask people to keep things a little bit civil in the comment section. You can absolutely hate this game for what it chooses to do. You don't have to want to play it. But it was very obvious that when I was playing this game on stream, some of the most vocal detractors hadn't played it or even watched someone else play it before forming their opinions. It's like, I don't want to watch Toy Story 4 because I feel that Toy Story 3 ended things off perfectly, but I don't make deeper claims about Toy Story 4. And in terms of my overall thoughts, I really enjoyed this game. I love what the story was looking to do. The gameplay is enjoyable. It's cool that you can hear enemies strategizing around you, and if you kill one of them, their friends like cry out for their loss. There are some new types of infected, but it's largely just the same from the first game that are still horrifying. The game is almost completely customizable in terms of difficulty, immersion, and accessibility to an extent that should honestly just be seen as a standard. As expected, the score for this is just absolutely gorgeous. It pulls you into the story as you're progressing through just as well as the first one did. It's stunning to look at. The animation and the graphics in this game are absolutely incredible. Everything from the skin, the facial expressions, the cold breath being expelled, tears, body movement, it's just stunning. It was super easy to lose hours of my time playing. It even manages to make me kind of learn stealth when my typical MO is just running into situations guns a-blazing. So this was probably a stealth mission, but when you do get to use the guns, they feel super satisfying. But the impact of The Last of Us comes from the story, so let's get to it. So as mentioned, when this story begins, I thought it was 100% one of revenge. From the trailers alone, we saw Ellie going on a brutal rampage, and as the story continues on, you think, oh, it's not just about revenge, it's also about how that hate can consume and destroy you, and the consequences of your actions and your decisions. And it definitely still is about all that, but there's also a more redeeming message that's wrapped around it. One of forgiveness. Forgiving the ones you trusted, forgiving the people you hated to the point of self-destruction, and also forgiving yourself for the choices you made, for the path you took, for the things you can't change, and what you can do going forward to redeem your humanity. There will always be a debate as to whether or not this game ever needed to happen, if it ruins the legacy of the first, and you could make arguments for either side. And I'm kind of left in the middle. I overall love the story. So much of it feels like a masterpiece that just gets slogged down by certain development decisions. I love seeing how Ellie progressed from the first game, and it also broke my heart to watch her destroy herself with an obsession for revenge, which is exactly what the game is going for. So for those of you who need a refresher, and for those of you who just want to watch this video without having played either games, let's do a quick recap of the first. So The Last of Us takes place in a world where people become infected by a mutated cordyceps fungus that takes over human brains, turning the host body into highly aggressive, perpetually in pain creatures that mutate more the longer they're infected. It's a nice flip up on classic zombie stories because you get the sense that there's a remnant of the person inside screaming out in pain until they're fully consumed. Like it. Not that it happens, but I just think it's a compelling flip up on the traditional mindless zombie. We mostly play as Joel, who loses his young daughter in the game's intro and has now become hardened through apathy and survival. And he ends up in a situation where he unwillingly has to escort a young girl who's immune to the infection to a doctor that may be able to use her to generate a cure. As he travels with Ellie, he learns to process the death of his own daughter, and we as the player grow to love her just as much as he does, and she grows to love and trust him in return. Then it all ends with Joel being told that the only way that they could potentially make a cure is by dissecting Ellie's brain. And Joel, who just spent the better part of a year traveling with and protecting this young girl, who he's now accepted as his pseudo-daughter, who's helped him process the death of his own daughter and regain some of his humanity, obviously goes in a complete rampage to stop that from happening.
Where was the operating room? I ain't got time for this. Where?
He then kills the lead doctor so that he can get Ellie out of the hospital, and then kills the woman that actually asked him to travel with Ellie so she doesn't end up following them. This is a morally ambiguous ending that the average person wouldn't fault him for, but it was still a selfish decision. Joel doesn't save Ellie because he thinks the chances of a cure are low or because she wasn't given a choice in the matter. He knows she probably would have agreed to it. Joel saves Ellie because he can't stand to lose another daughter. And very few people could fault him for that. Yeah, you get that Joel's a dick who condemned humanity humanity from the less emotional crowd, but most people would have made the same decision in that scenario. And if he didn't, he never would have been able to live with himself. It's a choice he has to live with, but it's one he never regrets. And I think that's why this has remained such a highly regarded story. There's no morally correct choice in this situation. In one scenario, you're allowing a little girl to die after leading her to the slaughter, and in the other, you're potentially condemning humanity. It ends with Joel lying to Ellie, saying that they had plenty of immune people already and realized it wasn't possible to make a cure, both so that she wouldn't hate him for what he did and also not blame herself for humanity's further collapse. So to justify part 2, we have to do something with this. The choice obviously ran the risk of having serious repercussions. Joel murdered people to get Ellie out of this situation. There was obviously a high probability that this would come back up down the line. And it did. Part 2 cuts to years later. We start off the morning after the events of one of the teaser trailers, you know, the one that pissed off a bunch of people because Ellie kissed a girl because people are homophobes. We've got a full video ranting about that from like 2 years ago if you're interested. But if you're someone who's upset at a piece of media for simply including LGBTQ characters, you were on the wrong video. Having diverse characters that are largely well written shouldn't be seen as a problem. But Ellie's 19 now, we get the feeling that there's some tension between her and Joel, but the two of them have integrated themselves pretty nicely into a community that's about as close to normalcy as you can get in the post-apocalypse. They've concealed Ellie's bite by burning it with acid and tattooing over it, and only Tommy and his wife Maria know the truth. And I love this extended intro because I feel like we get some really nice establishing moments where it seems like Ellie can be a normal kid and teenager growing up. The people of this town are trying to regain what was lost of their past lives, regain some trust in humanity, but so much of it is like a veil because the world outside their walls is still a very dark place. And all too quickly, the story gets us to play as a character named Abby, and she and her friends are looking for someone. And immediately I was like, are they looking for Joel? Okay. Oh my god, Joel's saving her. Oh my god, now she gonna kill Joel! And I was right. Joel saves her, and then suddenly that whole group is flipping on him. And rather than begging for his life, Joel says what I think is one of the best lines of the game.
Why don't you say whatever speech you got rehearsed? Get this over with.
Because he knows, he doesn't even bother asking the specific reason why she wants him dead. He knew someone could come calling at any given moment based on the choices he's made over the years. And it's at that moment that Ellie walks in to see him beaten to a pulp on the ground, pleading for him to get up as she watches Abby smash his head in with a golf club. It's brutal, it's visceral, and people hated it! This is the leak scene that caused the bulk of the controversy. It's also the leak scene that caused a lot of misconceptions as to who Abby was. But we'll get to that. And I'm not saying that you have to like what happened, but I kind of disagree with these arguments that Joel deserved something better or that he should have gone out with some heroic ending, because Joel's not a hero or a villain. He's a survivor. There are actually a lot of people that disagreed with his choice to save Ellie. So it's interesting that it's now some horrifying offense that someone was seeking revenge against him for the things he did. I'm not saying that I'm not upset that Joel is dead. I'm just saying I'm not mad at the game for doing it. I also disagree with the statements that by killing Joel, the game is bad. Joel is killed for a reason that's directly linked to the first game, and the entire second game is hinged on it. If this story wasn't what you wanted, that's okay. That's a valid reason not to like something. But I disagree with the assessment that they killed him off for shock value, which is an argument you could make for other characters in this game, but not with Joel. Joel's death is the primary motivator in this game. It is never forgotten. The story is designed to make you feel the loss the way Ellie does. We know Joel as a character, we've struggled with him, and because of that, we know Ellie's pain. We need to want that revenge as much as Ellie does, and the game does that incredibly well. But so many of the detractors don't even seem to care about some of these larger motivations. The voice actor for Abby is literally receiving large amounts of hate just because of the character she was hired to play. Like, hate a character all you want, but don't be the depraved weirdo that goes after the actor that was hired to play them. So obviously following Joel's death, Ellie wants to hunt down the killers. So Ellie and Dina set off. We learn that the group that killed Joel is part of the Washington Liberation Front, the WLF, or Wolves, and that there's a second religious cult group called the Seraphites that get nicknamed Scars for obvious reasons. But now they string people up, disembowel them, and approve of child brides for elders, as cults do.
But they decided he was to be a wife to one of the elders. Poor kid.
No. And the story up until this point shows us glimpses of the happiness Ellie could have, but she can't let what happened to Joel go. At times often becoming the worst of everything Joel ever was. She's not only willing to murder, but also torture. You literally spend 3 days brutalizing your way through Seattle to hunt down anyone involved in Joel's death. The game even puts a lot of these actions in your hands so that you can really understand the weight of what Ellie's doing. I think it's such a rich story of loss, revenge, and the emptiness it leaves, how that anger gives you something to focus on so you don't have to acknowledge the pain you're feeling, and how quickly you become something you never wanted to be. She's so obsessed that even when she knows Dina's gonna need medical attention, happen. She can't stop herself from hunting down Abby. As we go through the game, she gets more and more aggressive with the people that stand in her way. We see it in the dialogue, we see it in her face. She's so completely obsessed that she doesn't care how brutally she's working her way through these people. But there's also some really nice moments in this section of the game as well. My favorite being a flashback where Joel takes Ellie to the Wyoming Museum for her birthday. Maybe it's because I too love dinosaurs, but this was just such a magical moment. It's a fucking dinosaur!
Oh my god, it is a dinosaur!
And Joel even manages to get a recording of the Apollo 11 space launch so she can imagine it herself. It's wholesome, it's beautiful, it lets us see two characters that have been dealt such horrific pain and loss have a genuine moment of joy. But the moment gets a little bit tainted when we're shown the Firefly logo with liars painted underneath, and the tension here becomes notable. Ellie's always had reservations in the back of her mind that Joel lied to her. This is a simple moment, but it says a lot. So much of this game is about coming to terms with the best and worst memories you have of a person while dealing with grief. At some point, Ellie runs into Jesse, who had gone out to find them. She's having some conflicting feelings about Jesse and Dina's connection, what it means for their relationship. She continues on her revenge quest and murders two people who were present when Joel died to get information about Abby, and then realizes that one was pregnant. She's watching herself become a monster. She's broken, she's insecure, and it's at this moment that Abby busts into the situation. Ellie and us as the player are completely caught off guard. We're vulnerable. Our pseudo-uncle is facing the barrel of a gun, Jesse's just been shot in the head, and we're worried about Dina. This is the game's second moment of peak tension. It's the moment where you're waiting for everything to build up and spill over. And all too quickly, the game flips. And where we've just spent 12 hours playing as Ellie, suddenly we're a young Abby. And this is a very bold switch. We love Ellie, we feel her pain for Joel, because we also love Joel and we hate Abby for killing Joel. And the game does this quite intentionally, because we quickly realize Abby's increased attachment to the situation with Joel. It's not just that Joel condemned humanity and essentially ruined the Fireflies. The head doctor that Joel killed to save Ellie was Abby's father. So we now quickly realize that not only is Ellie on a revenge warpath, but Abby's been on the same one for years. If the story had always been from Abby's perspective, we would see Joel and Ellie as the villains. The whole situation is just a never-ending cycle of violence and loss for the sake of revenge. And for me, this was enough to understand her motivations. I still don't like what she did, but I have compassion for her. But the game keeps going. It has you interacting with Abby's world, her friends, her life experiences, showing that she's been obsessed with physically training her body and how her quest to kill Joel affected her remaining relationships. We see her lose all the people important to her, learn that killing Joel didn't fix anything, learn to let go so she can protect the people she does still have. We watch Abby break her side of the revenge cycle. However, I will say that this part of the game felt incredibly tedious to me. Maybe show us a couple flashbacks to establish her life, her father, and Owen, and her place in the WLF. And that's it. I don't hate Abby as a character, but her sections of the game felt the least fulfilling to me and had the most pacing issues. I don't need this story to flesh out in full detail why the enemies have backstories and that Ellie and Abby aren't so different. I already realized that the second she showed me who her dad was. I understand that they're establishing the connection between her and this character Lev after she's lost literally everyone else, but it just felt too drawn out. And even though I like Lev as a character, the runtime here could have at least been cut in half or even into a third, because it ends up in this weird zone where she has moments with characters like Owen and it raises questions for what her future might be there, but I can't care because I know he's lying dead in an aquarium, because we just killed him. It kind of felt like taking a break from the main game to play a DLC, which this probably would have worked better as. And part of what makes this feel also tedious is that we're just walking the same 3 days on a MacGuffin mission of futility. We're looking for medicine for a character named Yara with her brother Lev, and then Yara dies almost immediately after. I was already super annoyed with this mission, so having it essentially be useless was kind of upsetting. How the do we go through that whole... Get up! No! We spent all that time. But this is kind of where point 2 of I have a shitty opinion on a game I haven't played popped up. So as I'm playing, people start coming through the stream making comments about Abby being trans. And I was like, chill, she's not trans, she's just muscly, stop being weird. And then some of them started seeming confused, being like, no, I read a review, she's definitely trans. Come to find out. Lev is the transgender character. People literally saw a leaked video of a muscly girl killing Joel and assumed, because girls can't have muscles apparently. It's not like they don't blatantly lay out in the game that Abby became obsessed with physically training her body. And maybe it's because I used to work in a gym, so I saw girls that looked like this all the time, but it just doesn't seem that outlandish to me. And this was still happening a good 6 to 7 days after the game was released. And that's not okay. Because even if Abby was trans, that wouldn't be an issue, just like it's not an issue with Lev. And then it ultimately culminates to the moment where everything's gone full circle. And we end up in a situation where we're fighting Ellie, and we don't want to. No, I'm not gonna shoot Ellie. Because again, even though I understand why Abby did what she did, and I don't hate her, Ellie is one of my all-time favorite characters in any piece of media. So I'm playing as Abby and cheering for Ellie to fuck her up. Fuck her up, Ellie! The two go back and forth. Every time Abby gets a shot in on Ellie, I die a little bit inside, ultimately leading Abby to getting the upper hand on Dina, and I die a little bit more. Ellie is wounded, broken, and begging. Ellie knows that because she killed Mel, Dina being pregnant is probably going to fall on deaf ears with Abby. Then it's Lev that stops the situation from playing out, and Abby ultimately decides to walk away. And then it almost seems like the game is pushing towards its conclusion. That Ellie has realized that hate and revenge aren't worth it. She's almost died twice, almost lost Dina, and it ropes you into this scene of domestic bliss. They have sheep and a record player that plays the same song from the first night they kissed, and we get a flashback from the dance that was in the trailer, and then Tommy shows up. Fucking Tommy! I literally gotta cool off here. And at first we're happy that he's not dead, but we realize that the gunshot has caused him a lot of permanent damage, and he's still angry. He's broken, his brother is dead, his marriage is falling apart, and he's tracked down Abby. And I'm so angry because I just want Ellie to be happy! But we know she can't let go because we just saw her have a moment of PTSD where she can't save Joel, much like the many nightmares Abby has of the events of her father's death that continue past killing Joel. And we know that she's going to make the choice of revenge over her family. Obsession over letting go.
We've got a family. She doesn't get to be more important than that.
Because she can't let it go. She can't eat. She can't sleep. She doesn't feel like she got closure. She feels the pressure from Tommy to finish what they started, and she just can't find peace. So she leaves. And then we get another part of the game that feels a little bit weird, because all too quickly, we're back in control of Abby. And she's trying to find the remaining Firefly faction, and I was a little upset. I'm Abby again. God damn it. Wait, what house am I looking for? I was too busy lamenting about being pissed off. And almost immediately, Abby and Lev get kidnapped by another group called the Rattlers.
Ah! I'll kill her now.
Oh my god, it's Dog the Bounty Hunter. Now, obviously, it would make sense that there'd be different survivor groups across different areas of the United States. But at this point, the game is feeling a little bit bloated, and this section kind of feels like a whole new thing. And as much as I love the story winding around everything and what the ending ends up being, I spent a huge chunk of this part pissed off. Because they gave us 30 minutes of a happy ending just to rip it away and emotionally crush me. But the ending it builds into is just So Ellie fights her way through the Rattler. She's clearly super weak. She's been significantly injured, and my sleep-deprived psyche got a kick out of her getting people bit. That's the best part. Literally. She finds Abby, who's been strung up and left for dead, and at this point it seems like Ellie is almost willing to just let it go. But then she sees the blood on her hand, has a flashback to Joel's bloody body, and she can't drop it. She even threatens to kill Lev to force Abby to fight her because she doesn't just want to kill her, she wants catharsis. And we get this brutally gut-wrenching scene of two broken people fighting. One who's already realized that revenge is useless, and one that just can't escape her demons. In this fight, she even loses the switchblade that her mother left for her. We're holding Abby underwater with the last of our energy. We feel Abby struggling against us. We don't want to be doing this, or at least I didn't want to be doing this, because I knew it was going to leave Ellie feeling just as empty as before. And then we get a quick flash to Joel playing guitar, and we stop. In that moment, Ellie lets it go and realizes what she's been trying to learn all along: forgiveness. When I finished the game, I initially thought that Abby got more in the end, because it seems like Ellie is totally alone, whereas Abby has Lev. But regardless of what plays out, Dina and JJ and Tommy are all still alive. She also still has a place in Jackson. Abby lost Owen, who lost Mel and their unborn child. She gets her revenge on Joel, but quite literally loses her entire way of life, her group of people, and everyone who ever meant something to her. At this point in the game, we've been shown that Ellie went back to the hospital and knows that Joel lied to her. This was the major cause of tension that we saw between them at the beginning. And the game ends with Ellie going back to the now empty house, and we're shown a scene of them talking after the dance where Ellie snapped at him. And then the more Joel tries to be a father, the more upset Ellie seems to get. She talks about how Joel took away the potential for her life to mean something, and Joel confirms what we all know.
I would do it all over again.
I don't think I can ever forgive you for that. But I would like to try.
And that's the last conversation that they have. She wants to forgive him, but sadly isn't given the chance. But she does get that chance with Abby. It's not like the game ends with them being friends or even friendly. It just ends with them moving on before they can destroy what little they have left. And even though she's lost so much, at least she won't be destroying herself with hate anymore. And the game actually ended how I anticipated. Early on, I said that I assumed it was going to end with Ellie playing guitar. And it was. It's a little bit more brutal than I anticipated because Abby bit off 2 of her fingers, but it's a moment where I believe Ellie both forgives Joel and herself. And I bawled like a baby here, both because of the scene we just saw with Joel and the fact that Dina's not there waiting for her. And I get that she made her choice to leave, and Dina said that she couldn't be expected to wait and worry for her. But while working on this video, I noticed something. So while we're on the farm, Ellie isn't wearing the bracelet that Dina gave her earlier in the game, and she doesn't have it through the remainder of the game, but it's back on her wrist when she gets to the farmhouse. There is a slight chance that Ellie did get Dina back after letting Abby go, or that she's at least already reintegrated back into the community at Jackson where the farm wasn't far from. Maybe she's wearing it as a reminder of what she lost in the hopes that she can regain it. I don't know, but I believe that she's walking back to Jackson in that final clip of the game. And I will die on this hill for the culture! So overall, I did really enjoy this game. As mentioned, I feel there were moments that definitely wasted my time. It occasionally made me mad, and the game structure at times does affect the pacing, but I also loved so much of it. From the lighter moments to the heavy moments to the overall themes running throughout. Good media makes you feel, and this made me feel so much. And it still has me thinking about it a week after I finish playing. It makes me want to dive right back into the first game and relive it all from the start. I think there's a lot of positive discourse to be had over this game, whether you loved it or hated it or fell somewheres in between. But sadly, it's been so overshadowed with shallow analysis based on a leaked cutscene that it might take a little while before we get to see any of that. Because again, there's nothing wrong with disliking this game. I do think that there was something wrong with judging this game based on a cutscene with no context. Unrelated, if anyone wants to send me 2K so I can get this replica Taylor guitar. But that is going to do it for today's video. Have you guys played The Last of Us 2? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Did you love it? Did you hate it? I don't think there's a wrong answer here. You don't have to like everything. I didn't love all of this game, clearly, but I do think that there's a really solid story within it. Thank you as always to my Patreon supporters. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and enjoyed what you saw. Leave a like on the video if you're into that kind of thing. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and we'll catch you all later.